Hey, Clayton, in Matthew chapter 7, verse 23, Jesus says that some people will say, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? But Jesus will say, I never knew you. How could that be? How could someone perform miracles if Jesus didn't know them? Okay, first of all, when it says Jesus didn't know them, we got to remember this is not talking about Jesus not knowing about them, okay? This is saying you didn't have a relationship with me. Like you weren't connected with me. You claimed my name, but you weren't actually kind of, in connection with Jesus, okay? So how could these people, if they're not connected to Jesus, perform miracles, have prophecy, drive out demons? Where does this come from, okay? Let me tell you one thing that couldn't be the truth, okay? This could not be the people faking it. Right? Like this is different than like a con artist, right? Like there are some people who stage like, oh, I'm making a prophecy, or I'm going to stage a miracle or something. And they know that it's fake. They're trying to swindle people, or they're trying to, impress people or something like that. Okay. This is not that situation. These people in Jesus' story are people who say, wait a minute, I thought we did these things for you, right? Like they genuinely think these things are happening. They're just as convinced that they're in as Jesus is convinced that they're not, right? And so I think it comes down to kind of three options of what might be going on here, okay? First, it could be that these weren't actually real miracles or prophecies. The people just thought they were, right? Like they're doing things and they're thinking, oh, we're doing all this great work for God, and I'm hearing from God, and I'm doing this great stuff. And they're reading it as, God at work, but nothing's really happening. They're just kind of reading the situation as if it were God at work. The second option is that these things could really be happening, but the people aren't tapping into the power of God. They're tapping into spiritual forces that aren't Jesus, which, would be evil spiritual forces. So this would be the power of demons at work, okay? Now, I don't think that this is likely the case. This seems very odd, but it could possibly be that. What I think is probably happening is the third option. It could be that God was gracious in doing things through these people, even though these people didn't actually know Jesus, okay? And the reason God would use these people to perform miracles and communicate truth and to drive out spiritual forces is because Jesus wants to be merciful to the people they're serving, right? So these people are claiming to be spiritual leaders. People are trusting them, following them. And those people, the people who are in the congregation, the people who are in the ministry, are saying, I trust Jesus. And so even though the person who is the leader standing up trying to do these things is not actually connected with Jesus, the people who are there ministering to are connected to Jesus. And for their sake, he does that. I think about examples of churches where the pastor, after years of ministry, turns out to be living in sin and maybe even walks away from their faith, walks away from their ministry, that sort of thing. And people look back and they say, how did that work, right? And I know lots of people in those churches who say, man, I came to faith in Jesus there. I grew as a follower of Christ. My marriage was healed in that ministry. That I got an answer to prayer in that place. I grew in my knowledge of Scripture through the sermons of that person, right? There are pastors that I have listened to a ton of messages from, right? Back in the day, they had a thriving ministry, and I listened to their messages, and I learned a lot. There are things that stick with me today from their teaching that really made an impact on me, and now I wouldn't recommend those people because I know what they were actually up to, even during the time when they were preaching those messages. And I say, thank God that in spite of those people, God used those things in my life and the life of those people. There are people who are saved, even though that pastor might not have been saved. Now, that's a sobering thought. But the point of the passage, when Jesus is saying this, is that character matters more than results. And that's where we really go wrong. When we say, here's what matters, the flashy things, the things that seem successful, the things that seem impressive, those are the things that show that God is really with me. But the thing that actually shows it is if our lives are being changed, if we actually have our character being transformed to follow the way of Jesus. So this is the urging, okay? Worry less about the pastor who falls from grace and how they did the things that they did, and worry more about yourself and say, am I actually putting into practice the things that Jesus said to do?
Thanks for listening. If you've got your own questions, email questions@BibleSavvy.com. Like and subscribe to catch our regular episodes every Monday on the Bible Savvy Podcast.